Hi, this is Mark News from Plant Talk Radio. Thanks for subscribing and listening to our podcast, Your Gardening Questions from Plant Talk Radio. If you have a gardening question you'd like our host Fred Howard to answer, send him an email. The email address is fred@planttalkradio.com. Now for today's question. And Emily says, I wanted to put a trumpet vine on a fence near our property line, but the area is where water collects when it rains. Will trumpet vines survive that area that is wet some of the time, or is there a better vining plant?
The some of the time part of that sentence is the one that's debatable. Trumpet vine is a survivor under almost too many conditions. I've seen it where it is bone dry under a group of oak trees, runs 40 feet up the trunk, out on the limbs, under the shade of the tree, and when oaks and trumpet vines compete, the oaks win. That's all there is to it. But the trumpet vine still persists, flowers, does its thing. So we know that we can go into the droughty situation. Now, it depends on, I'm going to put it this way, how far into the pond you're going to be on that sometimes thing. If it is a matter of laying wet for a few or, well, several occasions in the spring when it is simply thawing and all the things that go on, it will probably survive. If it, however, stays wet, significantly wet up through this time of year, then there's going to be a problem. Now, it may not kill, but it would certainly hold the plant back. And there are people who have trumpet vines that wish they were being held back. So, Emily, I don't know what to tell you, and I don't really have, at least on the top of my head, I don't have a better suggestion. The old-fashioned honeysuckle vine certainly would come close to being able to handle that. And then there are some very weedy things, which we don't want to even get into, that can handle that situation. But I would say trumpet vine is worthy of a try. They're not terribly expensive. It's a good time of year to get it in, get it going, because I'm assuming that it's going to be drier from here on through the rest of the season that plant will be putting up with and getting accustomed to, if you will. Then come spring, it will be more or less settled into its spot, and you'll know by this time next year whether it's going to handle it or not. That's about the best way to put it, because I've seen it not in the pond ever, and not literally even right down into the mucky edges. But that plant is a survivor, period. Be sure you like it before you plant it, is what a lot of people have told me. But when it comes to attracting critters, well, flying critters, the hummingbirds just go nuts. I got a scare one time. It happened to be German Village here in this area, but it was an overhead that was completely, and I'll even say almost choked with trumpet vine by purpose, fertilized and so on, flowering heavily, and the hummingbirds and others were zipping around above it. And all of a sudden, I was talking to the owner, and one was buzzing in my ear, and that's a really interesting sound. Their wings move so fast you can't even hear it clearly. But I did move my head out of its way.
You know, it's funny, Fred, because when I read that question for the first time, something popped into my mind immediately. And I had a neighbor who did sort of the same thing and put in sort of a fence and everything in that collection area between, it's mounted between.
Normal.
And then, of course, it just moved the water in where he didn't want it. So sometimes, and you have designed thousands and thousands of landscapes, there are times when you want to leave those areas alone. They're important.
That's right. Well, they are important in terms of keeping basements dry and carrying off excessive water and so on. I've always told people when asked that they should never buy the bottom house on the block. Now, by that meaning that the one that's downhill where the big, collection head is for all of 15 neighbors or whatever it is running down, because they may have a small lake at a certain point. One fellow was about a 6'7" guy, and I told him, I said, if you can't reach down in the depth of the water that gets in your yard, get a pitchfork, walk out there with your boots on, no socks, and just clean off the grate. But yes, those are actually very important. A darn nuisance in some respects, but I would not create a dam to raise the trumpet vine up. I would just say give it a shot at its level or at the level of the lawn and go from there, because trumpet vine's pretty thrifty grower.
Hey, thanks again for listening to our podcast. Be sure to subscribe to our other podcasts as well, the Plant of the Week podcast and the Plant Talk Radio podcast, all on iTunes or your favorite podcast player. If you'd like to sponsor a daily podcast, contact us at fred@planttalkradio.com. To find out more about Fred Hauer and Plant Talk Radio, visit our website, planttalkradio.com.
Circle270media.com